Welcome to the Red Sneaker Writers Podcast. News, interviews, and writing tips for people who are serious about having a writing career and want some practical knowledge to help them achieve it. Your host is the nationally best-selling author of more than 50 books, William Bernhardt.
Hello, Red Sneaker Writers. Good times, huh? Optimistic times, or at least it seems like it here at the Bernhardt Hacienda. But I'm getting the same sense whenever I talk to my writer friends. I think it's permeating the book community, and that's a good thing. Or maybe it's just me, because as I may have mentioned at one time or another, I have a new book out. My latest novel, Final Verdict, hit the stands last Tuesday. This is the 6th and final book in the Daniel Pike saga, the one it's all been building to, where all the questions are finally answered, and Daniel Pike gets the finish that I think he deserves. I hope you'll agree with me. Check it out, especially if you're a fan of these Daniel Pike legal thrillers. For that matter, one of my good writer buddies, Betsey Kulakowski, who's been on this podcast before, had her new book come out just a week before mine. That's The Jaguar Queen. That's the second book in the Veritas Codex series, which features Dr. Lauren Grayson, who's got a TV reality In Search of the Unexplained type show where she investigates various mysteries all around the world. Like, for instance, in this one, the Maya Apocalypse. It's a lot of fun and highly recommended. My guest of honor for this podcast, my interview guest, is David Gaughran, who was the guest of honor actually at WriterCon here before last. He's a great friend of the podcast. He's been on before. As you probably already know, he is the author of Amazon Decoded, the Bible on book marketing in the modern age. And he has recently done an update of the book to, bring it into, bring it up to date and tell you about what's been happening in the past year or so. So I talked to him about that and how to use Amazon effectively, how the year of the pandemic has changed things, and you do not want to miss that. But first, the news. My first two stories are basically updates on things we've talked about in the past. First, I talked about how Book Expo, the primary book show, the publishing professional convention, had been canceled. Well, to sort of fill that vacuum, Publishers Weekly, important industry periodical, has announced that they're going to start a new U.S.-based trade fair, and they have given it the name U.S. Book Show, which is about as direct as it could possibly be. This year, it's going to be virtual for obvious reasons, but there are a lot of pluses for that, minuses too, but it means every one of you can watch it from home if you want to, and that's a big deal. The dates are May 26th through the 28th. I've been to Book Expo many times, never regretted it, always learned something, and now you can get the benefit, part of the program from home without leaving home. Some of it is for booksellers, librarians, publishers, but a lot of it is for agents and particularly self-published agents. Second news story. Last time I noticed that Josh Hawley's book had been canceled by Simon Schuster in the wake of the, you picked the word, the incursion against the U.S. Capitol. Josh Hawley was believed to have been a supporter. He was seen outside giving them the square fist and thumbs up and whatnot. And now he's being investigated. He and Ted Cruz are being investigated by an ethics committee about what part they may have played in that. Anyway, without getting political, Simon & Schuster canceled his book, The Tyranny of Big Tech, and when I announced it on the last podcast, I predicted somebody else will get it, probably a smaller right-wing leaning press. And not that I'm doing this item just so I can say I told you so, but I did tell you so. And it's been announced that his book is being picked up by the conservative publisher Regnery. It was just been the same book. It's going to come in the spring. In fact, it's going to come a little bit early. Their president and publisher, Thomas Spence, said, quote, Regnery is proud to stand in the breach with him. And the warning in his book about censorship obviously couldn't be more urgent, end quote. Regnery, in case you don't know, is a well-known publisher of right-leaning books, and this is far from the first time that they have picked up a book that the Big Five decided they just couldn't publish for one reason or another. They do a lot of bulk sales, so it would not be surprising to see this book given away at right-wing conventions or distributed on websites and whatnot. Here's the irony, though. Regnery is distributed by Simon & Schuster. So even though Simon & Schuster is not publishing it as such, they will still be sending it all around the world, which seems a little bit hypocritical at this point. To be fair, they probably have a long-term contract with this publisher to distribute its books. It might be hard to single one out to not publish, but then again, it could be done, or they could cancel the contract. There's been no indication of that, but it will be interesting to see if the book cancellation, was just sort of a gesture, or if they're really going to stick to their guns and decline to distribute the book in addition to not publishing. Here's some good news. We've talked before about how, despite all the hardships of the lockdown, it was a very good year for writers and book sales. Book sales, even print book sales, up significantly for the first time in years. Well, apparently deal making is up too. According to Publishers Marketplace, who just released their 2020 statistics, and they show that even during this pandemic, deal making was up at all of the major publishers, at all of the major categories. Overall, deals were up 8% after being, basically flat for many years. To be clear, I'm talking about authors making deals with publishing houses. Now, the amount of the advances appears to have declined. The six-figure deal is becoming increasingly rare, particularly for adult books. But you know what? The books are getting published. Authors like you are getting published. And that's the important takeaway here. There has been an announcement of yet another lawsuit against Amazon. This one brought by ebook customers who have formed a consolidation or consortium or whatever you want to call it. And they're accusing Amazon of violating antitrust laws. Okay, you're probably thinking, where's the news flash here? Here's the good part. Violating antitrust laws by colluding with the Big Five publishing houses to drive up ebook prices. Okay, quick history lessons. Originally, Amazon was free to put whatever price on the ebook offered by the Big Five publishers they wanted. Then those groups arm wrestled for many years and eventually won the right to what they call agency pricing, meaning the Big Five could put whatever price on their ebooks they wanted. And of course, they raised the prices, which caused ebook sales to decrease, which appears to be what they wanted. They were trying to drive people toward print sales because that's the only way the Big Five are going to survive right now. So, anytime you see one of those articles saying ebook sales are diminishing, they're so not. That just means that article is taking statistics strictly from big publishers, not Amazon and other online booksellers that are selling all kinds of ebooks. The irony here is that after fighting and getting the right to set their own higher prices, now Amazon's being accused of colluding with them. Good luck with that. I don't really see it. Prices have gone up, but that's because that's what the Big Five wanted to happen. Here's an interesting factoid to tuck in your belt, Red Sneaker Writers. Amazon, as of 2018, according to Bloomberg, controls 89% of the ebook market. Yeah, you heard me right, 89%. And that was as of 2018. I bet it's more now, because we all know ebook sales have soared in 2020 as more and more people discovered ebooks because bookstores were closed, libraries were closed, so they found out ebooks weren't as bad as they thought they were. So yes, absolutely, Amazon controls a huge amount of the marketplace, but it's the Big Five setting those prices. A couple quick stories that are both related to our new president here in the United States. On Inauguration Day, a new comic book was offered by Tidal Wave Comics. They've got a series called Political Power, and they released new Joe Biden and Kamala Harris comic books. President Joe Biden and Madam Vice President were released on Inauguration Day. Basically, these two politicians become superheroes. You may not be reading comic books, I don't know, or may not be reading that one, but I do think it's a good sign of a changed attitude. Here's another Biden-related book that really warms my heart. Braydon Harrington has got a book deal with HarperCollins Children's Books. As some of you may know, he is the young teenager who President Biden befriended because the boy stutters, just as Joe Biden did when he was young, and he has talked about how much grief he got as a child because of the stutter, and that's what they've bonded over. And if you watched the primetime inaugural special on the 20th, you saw Braydon Harrington speaking quite well for a short time. Well, now he's got a picture story book coming out called Braydon Speaks Up. I mean, isn't that fantastic? Maybe it's just so you know, when I was young, I had a speech impediment. Took me a long time to get over. And so to hear these stories of stutterers moving beyond that, or for that matter, that wonderful poet, the inaugural ceremony poet, our first ever National Youth Poet Laureate, Amanda Gorman, she also struggled with a speech impediment. I think the same one I had, because she talked about how she has rewritten poems to avoid words that have R's in the middle and practices to make sure she's pronouncing it correctly. She still struggles with it, which I totally get it. And for me, it's really heartwarming to see people overcoming this and not only getting on with their lives, but doing extraordinary literary work. Amanda Gorman's also going to have a book of poetry featuring the poem she read at the inauguration, The Hill We Climb, that's going to come out later this year. One last story for poetry buffs, which, who isn't? You thought it was hard to find poetry? Well, it's not. It's all over the internet. It's all over Instagram. But now there's a toll-free poetry hotline started by Philadelphia's poet laureate. I apologize if I mispronounce the name. Tripetta B. Mason has established this service. Call in. It's free. And every Monday, you can get a new 90-second poem. Could there possibly be a better way to start your work week? The news segment ran long for this podcast, so the writing tips segment will be brief and kind of an extended commercial, but a good one, an important one that I think can benefit every red sneaker writer out there. I have said this before and I'll say it again. Everyone needs an editor, maybe more than one. I don't care how good you are. I don't care if it's your first book or you're like me and you're currently writing your 56th book. Everybody needs an outside set of eyes. Other people will see things you don't. You don't have to believe or agree with everything you hear, but you should at least think about it and take the opportunity to get input from others. I know some people send their books out when they're done to beta readers, and that's a good process too, but here I'm talking about something that's much more detailed and probably comes early. An earlier edit that comes typically after the first draft, maybe even earlier, we call a content edit or a developmental edit. And one of my friends who is a very good editor who I personally have used repeatedly is running a big sale right now. Till the end of January, Elisa Dean will offer you a content edit, and you will not find a better one anywhere, I promise you. And she's offering it for only $200, regardless of the page count of your book. So all of you with the massive fantasy epics, this is even more of a deal for you. Anyway, if you're looking for an editor, I know some of you are cloistered or isolated, don't have a writing community, but you need another set of eyes. I can't tell you what a fine opportunity this is. To take part and check it out, you can visit her website, which is aliciadean.com/editing-services, and that's spelled ALICIADEAN.com, or you can just email her, which is alicia@aliciadawn.com. It's a great opportunity. Take advantage. My interview this time is with our friend David Gaughran. He's been the guest of honor at WriterCon, and for a good reason, because there is nobody who understands Amazon ads and how to have your book sell well at Amazon any better than he does. And that's a good thing to know, since I hear rumors that Amazon sells 89% of all ebooks. David has written a book called Amazon Decoded. You're going to hear me talking about that, but the point is he's done an update to bring it into 2021, and he has a lot of wonderful tips. Here's what he had to say. Dave, welcome back to the podcast.
Good to talk to you again, Bill.
I don't remember if I've told you this story, but a couple of years ago, we were both speaking at the Novelists Inc. convention, and the first day I presented went well, full room, felt pleased with myself, and then the next day, the room was maybe a third of the way full, and I thought, wow, what did I do wrong? Have I offended people? And then one of the guys in the room told me, no, it's just David Gaughran's in the next room over. I thought, oh, well, can't compete with that.
Well, I was given a free beer, in fairness.
Is that what it was? Now I know what to try next time. No, what it is, you were talking about Amazon Decoded, which everybody wants to know how to understand Amazon better. That's a book you've written, and now you're updating and revising and doing a new edition, right?
Yeah, this book has a funny history, actually. It was back in 2018 when I was about to release what was then the latest edition of Let's Get Digital, the third edition. And my editor suggested to me, who is Tammy Lebrec, who is the email genius, she suggested to me that I write a short book and just give it away for free to boost my mailing list. So I wrote the first edition of Amazon Decoded, which was a very short book. It was only about 50 pages. And I wrote that in about 4 days from start to finish and had it published and everything, which was a crazy kind of time frame. And it was really, really popular. And this book probably has ended up having the biggest beta reading group of all time, because over 10,000 authors downloaded it. And I had a note on the back. I think I was already thinking, as I was writing it, like, oh, there could be a full book here and there could be a lot of interest in it. And I asked people at the back to email me their feedback. So I ended up getting loads of feedback. I think thousands of authors ended up giving me feedback in one form or another. And then over the years as well, I've been fortunate enough that lots of people have shared with me their strategies, their insights on Amazon, their data. And I've been able to do a few of those experiments myself and participate in some. So I've been able to take all that knowledge from both the short version of the book, all the feedback from authors on what they wanted to hear more on, and some leads. People sent me information about, because Amazon doesn't give a lot of information when they come to conferences like NINC, as I'm sure you know. They really give us very, very little. But they give a lot more to like developers and via AWS and all these other arms of Amazon. They're a lot more forthcoming about how everything works. So once you know where to look and where to do the digging, you can actually find out a lot about how Amazon works. And this isn't just interesting on an academic level. There's a lot of this information will actually change how you market your books, things like your metadata, but things how you put together a launch and the different ways that you should promote your books so that you can actually get Amazon to take over and do the selling for you. So I've been exploring all that for the last year or so, on and off, as I've been writing different drafts of this book and just researching further and trying to confirm all the things that we thought about how the system worked. And it's been a really, really fascinating project from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, this book is like the Bible for book marketing on Amazon, which is, of course, the main market. I used it for my own book, used it for books that we publish. What are some of the highlights? I know there are a lot of people listening to this thinking, I know there are people whose books are selling at Amazon, but mine isn't. How do I make my book more discoverable?
Well, it's really interesting when you start to break down how the Kindle store works and how Amazon actually makes all those millions and millions of recommendations to readers every single day, and the various different places on the site where they do it, and the various different triggers that will actually cause Amazon to recommend your book to a reader. And once you know how that stuff works, you do start to make adjustments in how you present your book, the kind of metadata you attach to it, and definitely in the way that you launch and promote your books. Just to give you one example, there's a lot, authors talk a lot about Alsobots these days, but there's a lot of misunderstandings about them. And people get very concerned now that their books are less discoverable on Amazon because a lot of people are seeing that the Alsobots have gone away from their books page. And there tends to be a view out there that this means that all organic visibility on Amazon is gone now, that it's all now pay to play and you have to get good at Amazon ads or whatever. But honestly, that's rubbish. Because the system, the recommendation engine, the whole system that powers these millions and millions of recommendations to readers every day, is blissfully unaffected by Alsobots getting removed from your page. So just to give you an example, I was finally working my way through George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones series, or A Song of Fire and Ice. And I noticed that after I bought the second book in the series, you could actually start the clock. And I know that Amazon will email me a recommendation to buy the third book in about 2 weeks after that purchase. But even before that, the recommendation engine is kicking into gear. So as soon as I bought that second book in the series, right there on screen, Amazon never misses a trick. So right there on screen, after I've completed the purchase, Amazon is recommending me another book right away. And it's the next book in the series. And in fact, the book that they recommend right away after you purchase a book is the first Alsobot. So that's why it's very important to make sure that your books are in the Alsobots for your own books, especially for a series. You definitely want to see book 3 being the number one Alsobot or near the top of the Alsobots for your series, or else Amazon won't start recommending it to readers in that manner. It won't email them 2 weeks after they buy book 1 or download book 1 and suggest that they buy book 2. So these boring little metadata things where it's not the sexiest topic in the world, let's be honest. But if you just spend a little bit of time to make sure that your series metadata is perfect, for example, that will ensure that Amazon pushes readers through your series at regular intervals. And this is great when, sometimes we do a promotion on a book 1 or something and we give away thousands of copies. And we often wonder, how many people are actually opening that free book? Is it just sitting on Kindles? Well, the chances of them actually opening it and reading it are much greater once you get Amazon's recommendation engine kind of prodding them, because if they download a freebie and then Amazon recommends the book 2 a couple of weeks later, that reminds them that they have that book and they were interested in it and they should go back and read it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned Amazon ads as being not essential or not the only way to go, but can they be useful?
Well, yeah, I'm actually not a huge fan of Amazon ads personally. I get a lot more joy personally out of Facebook and BookBub ads. But Amazon ads definitely have their uses. I think they're best. The funny thing about Amazon ads actually is they're the least price sensitive platform. So if you're selling higher priced books, Amazon ads might be a good platform for you to explore. But the thing is, you actually don't need to be good at all these platforms. Like I do just fine without being very good at Amazon ads. Once you have, 1 or 2 ways of reaching readers, that's often more than enough. And I think the danger with authors is actually that they spread themselves too thin. That they try and get good at everything at once. They're trying to get good at email. They're trying to get good at Amazon ads, Facebook, BookBub, content marketing. And it's just too much overload. And especially if it starts to cut in on the most important thing of all, which is writing new books. So I think, if you're doing fine with Facebook ads, I wouldn't stress too much about learning Amazon ads or learning BookBub. Mm-hmm. Once you have one of those working for you, I think that's enough. And I think it's better to get really good at one of them than to get moderately good or tiny bit good at all 3 of them. So I'm not so concerned that I'm not that great at Amazon ads. I probably will crack it eventually, but there's more than enough readers on those other 2 platforms for me personally.
What do you suggest for people who aren't necessarily, tech heads, but need to be able to find out what are the optimal keywords or what are the best categories, for increasing the visibility of my book?
Yeah, well, this is the keywords thing is one area where it's changed a lot in the last few years. I'm sure you've noticed over the last 10 years or so that when you use something like Google, it's very different to how it was 10 or 15 years ago. Whereas before, you had to kind of type in a language that the computer would understand. You would have to type something like, Chinese restaurant, Lakeview, Chicago, if you wanted to find a Chinese restaurant near you. Whereas now you can just shout into a speaker, and then Siri or Alexa will do the search for you. And you can talk in what they call natural language. So I think the mistake some people make with their keywords on Amazon is they're still putting them in that kind of stiff way that a computer will understand. Whereas what they really need to do is go to Amazon itself and pretend they're a reader searching for books like the ones that they write, and just start typing into the box. And you will see Amazon actually, doing this autocomplete where they suggest the rest of the search for you. So if you were to start typing in Nora Roberts, for example, it might say Nora Roberts new release 2020. And, if you're Nora, that might be a better keyword for you than just Nora Roberts, which might have a lot of competition, for example. So I would go to the Amazon search box, start typing it in, and then take the phrases that Amazon suggests as an autocomplete as the basis for your keywords.
What's your thoughts about Kindle Unlimited? Good idea for authors or not so much?
Well, there's so many pros and cons and so many strong feelings about it. I take a very pragmatic view personally, and I try and be agnostic on it, and I look to my genre. So for me, writing historical fiction and nonfiction, there's not really that much point in me being in Kindle Unlimited. So if it's a tie like that, I like to be available everywhere. But if I wrote something like space opera, or for example, I am working on some pen name science fiction stuff, and that's definitely going into Kindle Unlimited because that's much more strong genre for Kindle Unlimited. So I would look at the top 100 on Amazon for your particular niche. And if you see that it's absolutely dominated by Kindle Unlimited books, I think that's a pretty strong argument for going into Kindle Unlimited for your books in that niche. But if you see that it's not, then I think that's a pretty strong argument for staying out. At least that's how I look at it.
Interesting. So it's genre-based. Same thing for the decision about whether to go wide or be Amazon exclusive?
Yeah, because your only way of getting into Kindle Unlimited as a self-publisher is to be exclusive to Amazon. So that's a pretty big cost. Now, some of the benefits are pretty great, and we all know that, there's a bit of a myth out there that Amazon favors Kindle Unlimited books. And I talk about this a lot in Amazon Decoded, actually. The different ways that Amazon does favor them, and some ways that it disfavors them. So I think a few conspiracy theories are going to get shattered when people read this book. But what's interesting, I think people are looking at it from the wrong perspective. They're either looking at it from Amazon's perspective or they're looking at it from the author perspective. But it makes a lot more sense when you look at it from the reader perspective. Now, imagine you're a reader and you've already paid your $10 a month or whatever it is for Kindle Unlimited. One thing I noticed actually as a reader, when I bought a new Kindle device, now Amazon is very aggressively pushing Kindle Unlimited to people. So anytime you buy a new device on Amazon now, they give you like 1 month or 3 months or sometimes 6 months free Kindle Unlimited. And I don't think you can even opt out of it. And what I noticed was the actual Kindle store changed overnight. It looked like a totally different store. As soon as I took that Kindle out of the box and activated it and hooked it up to my Amazon account, the store literally changed in front of my eyes. All of a sudden, Amazon was only recommending me Kindle Unlimited books for the most part. Some of my old favorites, they would still occasionally recommend them, but it was mostly pushing Kindle Unlimited. And I don't buy into the conspiracy theory that this is Amazon being unfair in some way. I think this is Amazon serving the customer. I think Amazon knows that the average Kindle Unlimited subscriber wants to be recommended the books that would be basically free to them because they've already paid their subscription. It's like maybe if you had a gym membership and you're already paying for it monthly, you're not going to go to another gym and pay in at the door to use the gym for that day. You're going to go to the one where it's already free. So I think Amazon is always testing things. They will throw out a few more traditionally published books in your recommendation emails, or they will throw in a few more non-Kindle Unlimited books. But they see that Kindle Unlimited subscribers don't respond to them. They want the ones that are free. So, that's something you need to keep in mind. Once you look at it from the reader's perspective, it starts making a lot more sense.
That's a good point. We all know that the publishing world's been through dramatic changes since the digital revolution of more than 10 years ago now. But more recently, last year or two, what are the biggest changes in the landscape that you've seen?
Well, I think, we're going through a giant kind of global public health crisis, if you like. And that is going to have a huge effect, especially if the economic downturn is as severe and prolonged as some people think it might be. And we're certainly going to see something on that front. But I think that is going to impact the traditional end of the business more. It's going to impact traditional publishers who are depending on print sales more and physical bookstores more, and all the authors and professionals associated with that part of the industry. One thing that ebook retailers and Draft to Digital and all these other companies reported, that as soon as these lockdowns started, they were seeing a huge increase in ebook sales and especially in free books. And I think that's a sign of a lot of new people coming into the market. And I've certainly seen this myself, and other authors have seen a greater response to any free stuff they're putting out there. And also seeing a lot of new entrants to the ebook market in reader terms. Like you know from some of the emails that you're getting that people don't know how to download an ebook or how to get the Amazon app on their phone, which is a sign that someone is switching to ebooks now because, for rather obvious reasons, at the moment.
They resisted it at first, they're going to do it now.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think the digital end of the business is completely protected from any kind of shocks here. Obviously, if people have less money, that's never good on any level, or people are losing their jobs or whatever. But also, there's this start of this antitrust chatter surrounding Amazon and Facebook and Google, and we don't know how that is going to play out, because it seems to be there's some bipartisan support for that. So I don't know if whatever result of the election will really affect that train once it gets going. But we don't know that there will be any kind of antitrust action against Amazon. But if something like that gets in motion, that would certainly seem to impact self-publishers then much more than traditional publishers or anyone on that end of the business. So there are question marks and uncertainty there. But what I think, anytime I see something like this, well, firstly, I try not to worry about anything that's outside of my direct control, because I can't influence the US Congress that much, really. And I can't single-handedly prevent an economic recession. But what I can do is I can protect myself against the future. And I think the best way to do that is to really focus on, how independent am I in terms of everyone is dependent on Amazon to some level, and Amazon and a lot of people are dependent on Facebook to some level to reach readers. But the best way that I can protect myself against anything bad happening in the future, for me, is to build up my mailing list, because I can take that with me anywhere I go. So even if the worst happened and Amazon was shut down or broken up or whatever, or Facebook was, which is one of my primary tools for reaching readers, I would still have my mailing list. So I'm putting a lot of effort this year into trying to build my mailing list up as much as possible, so that, and I'm using a lot of freebies at the moment, just responding to the market, because the market seems to be, very hot on freebies right now. So I changed some of my plans for this year to include a bit more free stuff and to include a bit more of a push to my mailing list, because that feels like the best steps that I can take to protect myself against whatever comes in the next couple of years.
That makes perfect sense to me. Dave, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, David, for that wonderful interview. Just going to remind you again, Final Verdict, my new novel, 6th book in the Daniel Pike legal thriller series, is now on sale. And while you're online or at the bookstore, take a look at Betsey Kulakowski's new book, The Jaguar Queen. It's a lot of fun, and I think you'll enjoy it. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit.